Deku? I think he's some pro. By clouds. My head in the clouds, not coming down. Chapter 86. Negotiation. Izuku gulped as Shigaraki grinned down at him. He didn't know what a murderer considered less permanent damage, and honestly, he wasn't really anxious to find out. But he was trapped. They'd taken away his weapons and tied him up so he couldn't fight back. The only thing he could rely on at all, until Eraserhead came to save him, was his brain. And that didn't really help against physical damage. Unless he could find some way out of it. Can I offer an alternative? He had no idea where he was going with this. He had no plan, but apparently he also had no filter, so it was happening, and he was just gonna have to come up with something. Time to use that big brain of his and make Nezu proud. As expected, Shigaraki just looked at him in disbelief, and Darby roared with laughter.
Come on, brat. How stupid can you get? You're tied up, about to be tortured out of your mind because we enjoy your pain, and you really think we'll accept an alternative?
Izuku shrugged as best as he could. I mean, it depends on if I can offer you something better, right? That's how deals work. Shigaraki scoffed and rolled his eyes.
Unless you're offering to join us, I'm pretty sure you just failed your barter objective. Game over.
Izuku shuffled through everything he knew about Shigaraki.
Wait, you talk in gaming lingo a lot. Because he's a nerd. Darby smirked. Which is an insult. You're not really helping your case here.
No, not like... Izuku forced himself not to panic. He needed to look in control. What I mean is that the League didn't have a lot of members before recently, right? So you didn't have a lot of people to play with. And I'm sure Darby and the others are sick of playing with you already, too.
Wow. You're really bad at this. Shigaraki deadpanned. It's almost entertaining. Yeah, Darby drawled. Number 1 rule of avoiding torture. Add insult to injury. I mean, he's not wrong, but still. Are we sure this guy is actually a master strategist or whatever? He's a quirkless brat. Of course he's stupid, Shigaraki said. But I want to see if he hits rock bottom and keeps digging. Go on, kid. What's your point?
Izuku's cheeks burned at the insults, but he pushed forward. Well, why don't you play with me? I'm literally a captive audience. I can't say no to another round. You get a gaming partner, the rest of the League gets a break, and I already know you're better than me, so we can add psychological torture and humiliation to the deal. What do you say?
That is the stupidest thing I've ever...
Darby trailed off as he noticed Shigaraki nodding thoughtfully.
Please don't tell me you're actually considering this. What? The kid makes good points, Shigaraki defended. You're always whining when I make you play. Might be nice to play against someone who isn't gonna melt my best controller. You dust your controllers all the time, Darby complained. I don't get why you're so upset over one. It lit up, Shigaraki yelled. It was cool.
I don't have a quirk, Izuku pointed out. I can't lose control and break the controller. Darby glared at him,
You're just trying to get out of being tortured.
Well, yeah. Izuku gave an awkward smile. But, do you really want to play him while we wait for Sensei to give you permission to kill me? Darby threw his hands up in the air.
Ugh, fine! Go psychologically destroy the hero bat with video games. But I think we should up the ante a bit. Something should happen if he loses.
Izuku gulped and turned to Shigaraki, who was nodding thoughtfully.
Real-life consequences always enhance the experience. So, let's play it this way.
He leaned forward, forcing Izuku to crane his neck to get away from him, and grinned.
You know a lot about heroes, right? So every time you die in the game, you tell us an interesting bit of info, like an NPC giving out a reward for winning a quest. If you refuse, we take a finger instead. How's that?
Izuku felt sick to his stomach. It felt like a betrayal. Give the villains info on his friends or take the torture himself. There were no good choices. If Ereza were here, he'd say that giving up the info was the logical option. And Nezu would challenge him to come up with half-truths, or nuggets of info that sounded priceless but were actually more worthless than his old teachers thought he was. It would be a challenge, but since when had Izuku stepped down from one of those? He took a deep breath and nodded. Deal. What game are we playing? Shota didn't even look up as Bakugo, Uraraka, Shinso, and Todoroki walked through the door.
No.
Bakugo scoffed.
You haven't even heard our idea yet. And whatever it is, the answer is no.
Shota rubbed the bridge of his nose.
The heroes will save Deku. You are students.
But Toga's not, Uraraka pointed out. She saved my life at the summer camp and you guys let her.
Her situation is different,
Vlad King explained awkwardly, glancing at Shota.
She's under the guardianship of a pro-hero,
Todoroki finished.
And not technically a UA student, and so the school won't face backlash if she's injured like they would if one of us were.
Shota sighed.
Your point.
Shinso smirked and held up a bag. It was insulated to keep it cold, and Shota raised an eyebrow as he took it.
If this is full of snakes about to jump out at me.
Shinso rolled his eyes.
No, it's even better. Just look, old man.
Shota opened the bag curiously, Vlad glancing over his shoulder, only to blink at the sight of dozens of vials of blood, each neatly labeled in Yayorozu's handwriting, along with a notebook that could have been one of Deku's.
Okay. Explain.
We can't go on missions. We get that, Uraraka piped up. But since Toga's quirk evolved during the attack, if she goes, then we can too. Kinda. We each wrote down some tips for using our quirks too, so she can learn them faster.
There's blood from 1B in there too, Shinso added. They didn't want to be left out. And we're going to help save him, Bakugo threatened. It's just up to you whether we have to be there to do that or not. Problem children.
Shota looked to Vlad in exhaustion,
It's a decent plan, but she's your daughter. It's up to you.
Vlad thought for a moment.
She's been begging to go anyway, and she's more used to danger than the students are. If it keeps the rest of our kids out of danger, I'll go along and make sure she doesn't get hurt.
Shota turned back to the students.
Fine, you win. But if I hear of anyone leaving UA to go fight, I will not hesitate to expel them. Do you hear me?
Loud and clear, old man. Bakugo huffed.
But remember, we literally put our blood, sweat, and tears into this mission, Shinso pointed out. We're relying on you to do the rest.
Uraraka nodded. Bring him home safe. Please. Shota didn't hesitate.
We will.
The kids nodded, and Shota watched them leave. A headache already coming on, but it wasn't as bad as it could have been. At least the kids had agreed to stay safe.
You've got to be proud of those kiddos, Eraser, Vlad said. That's a pretty creative solution. It's all right, I guess. Shota griped stubbornly. The kids have come a long way. Plus, it gives me an idea. How's Nezu coming with the villains?
Izuku bit his lip and tried to not grip the controller too tightly. He'd lost. He'd known he would, but despite his best efforts, he'd really only managed to stay alive for 15 minutes in the game. And now Shigaraki and Darby were both leering at him, like vultures ready for the carnage.
Time to pay up, kid.
Darby's grin pulled at his staples.
Info or pain?
Your choice.
Like the brat will ever actually betray his precious heroes, Shigaraki said. Well, brat, we're waiting.
Izuku's mouth was dry, and he frantically looked around the room. There were no better escape routes than the last 10 times he'd checked, so what info could he give them that wouldn't get someone killed? His train of thought crashed off the rails when his gaze caught on Shigaraki's shoes. It wasn't about heroes, but he glanced towards the TV where All for One might be eavesdropping. But if what Darby had said about the light was true, then he wasn't listening. Yet. We wear the same brand of shoes, Izuku said carefully. They're specially made. Shigaraki scratched at his neck.
This again. I asked for info on heroes, you brat, not fashion.
They're specially made, Izuku repeated slowly. They have extra room in the toe for an extra toe joint. Only quirkless people find them comfortable. Shigaraki stopped scratching and stared at him in confusion.
What?
Darby started laughing.
You must really be desperate not to give us any actual information, you useless brat. If you hadn't noticed, then you're more stupid than I thought. But Shigaraki definitely has a quirk. He can prove it on your face if you'd like.
Izuku ignored him, keeping his eyes on Shigaraki. Your quirk came in late, didn't it? You were probably already 5 when it finally appeared. When did you meet All for One? I bet it was around that same time, wasn't it?
Shut up!
Shigaraki growled.
Sensei saved me.
Did he? Izuku asked.
From what?
Disintegration is extremely destructive and hard to control. I bet the first time it manifested it was absolutely terrifying. Was that what he saved you from?
Wait a minute.
Darby was no longer laughing, as he looked between Izuku and Shigaraki.
What are you saying?
Don't! Shigaraki screamed.
Shut up! Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
Izuku knew that the smart thing to do would be to stop talking, but he'd already gone too far, and he couldn't stop the words from spilling out. Disintegration was never your quirk, Shigaraki. All for One gave it to you with the full knowledge of what it was and what it would do when it manifested. You were born quirkless, just like me. Chapter 87. Execution. The room was deathly silent in the wake of his pronouncement, and Izuku could only kick himself and hope that the deathly part wasn't going to be literal. Why had he said all that? What had he been thinking? After a few painfully long moments, the door opened with a bang, and Twice walked in, followed closely by Magne, and shattered the silence. Hey guys, why the long faces?
Sounds like a party.
It was enough to shake Darby out of his funk, and his voice practically dripped with venom.
So that bastard basically created Shigaraki to fit his own damn goals?
Izuku gulped. Yes? Yeah. That seems to be the gist of it.
Wait.
Magne looked between Darby and Shigaraki. What's going on? Shigaraki was still frozen in shock, so it was Darby who answered.
Shiggy here wasn't born with disintegration. He could have had a normal, happy life outside of all of this. But no. His precious sensei wanted a kid he could raise and manipulate into the perfect villain, so he forced a goddamn cursed quirk on him.
No, Twice gasped.
That doesn't sound bad at all. And to top it off, I bet the rest of us are just worthless pebbles on the side of the road next to his masterpiece.
Darby spat.
Shiggy's perfect sensei is nothing but a selfish, abusive, manipulative piece of shit. No better than...
He cut himself off with a growl, and Izuku eyed him warily as his hands burst into flames. Hopefully, Kurogiri cared enough about his bar to protect it from Darby's rage. But with how badly he was taking this, Izuku wasn't sure they could count on that. He felt like he missed something somewhere. He'd been expecting violence from Shigaraki, but the rest of the league shouldn't be close enough to prompt this kind of sympathetic reaction. Unless Darby had experienced something similar in the past. He didn't have time to fully explore that revelation before Shigaraki recovered enough to start scratching his throat again.
No, Sensei wouldn't. Would he? No, he saved me when those worthless heroes wouldn't. You wouldn't have needed saving if that bastard didn't force his stupid quirk on you,
Darby shouted.
Now,
Kurogiri's calm voice cut through. Let's just calm down and think about this. Young Tomura.
Sensei saved me.
Shigaraki sounded lost.
Why would he have... just to get me on his side?
I mean, he is a villain, Magne pointed out. He manipulates everything. Is it really that odd that he would manipulate a kid and groom them into becoming what he needed? Izuku knew it was probably too early to be feeling hurt, but with the way things were going, there was a chance the villains would turn on each other, and that might be his best chance to escape, so he gave it a little push. By creating a situation where you needed to be saved, All for One would have gotten you to trust him instantly. You were a vulnerable little kid, and he took advantage of that, knowing that you would do anything your savior told you. Even murder. That's... Magne wrinkled her nose in disgust. That's despicable. Doing that to a kid. Do we really work with this monster?
Maybe the rest of you do,
Darby growled.
I'd rather burn this place to the ground than waste my life groveling to another abusive asshole.
Kurogiri looked around the room. I don't want to believe it. Why would Sensei order me to protect and care for Tomura if he was the one that was trying to harm him? But Deku does point out a concerning amount of evidence. Sensei's a great guy, Twice said.
He's a monster. Sensei.
Shigaraki suddenly stopped scratching, and Izuku leaned back as far as he could when he saw the crazed look in his eyes.
He did this to me. He killed them. He ruined my life.
Darby scoffed.
That's what we've been trying to tell you, you stupid dust bunny.
Sir? Magne glanced towards the TV, making sure the light was still off before turning back to the group. What are we going to do about it?
I don't care about the rest of you, but I'm out,
Darby said.
I'm not staying if it means working under a bastard like him.
I'm kind of in the same boat, Magne added. I can go find a better boss that's not just going to use me.
Good riddance, miss you never,
Twice whined. No, I don't want you to go. Can we just get rid of Sensei instead? Izuku gasped, and the room went silent. They looked at each other for a long moment before Darby turned to Shigaraki and grinned.
I'm down if you are.
I'm not sure a coup is the best plan, Shigaraki sighed. But if it will protect you, Tomura, then I would recommend doing so quickly. The longer you delay, the more risky this course of action will become. Wait, are we really talking about killing All for One? Magne whistled. I mean, he deserves it, but you guys have got balls.
I wasn't serious,
Twice yelled.
Get the pitchforks. Let me at him.
Kurogiri turned to Shigaraki. You are the leader, young Tomura. The decision falls on you. Izuku held his breath. This hadn't been where he thought this was going to go at all, and he had mixed feelings about it. On the one hand, he didn't want to be responsible for someone's death, even a villain. But on the other, If the villains took themselves out, then that was less people that the heroes had to fight. So he just didn't say anything. It was Shigaraki's decision to make.
Kurogiri.
Shigaraki took the hand off his face, allowing it to crumble in his grip.
I think it's time we pay Sensei a visit.
Kurogiri nodded and created a portal. Izuku had to hold back a smile. With the villains gone, he would have a better chance at maybe getting a signal out. He was still mostly untied from playing video games, so maybe he could use the gaming console to call a razor? Or he might even be able to make a run for it, since All for One was probably not in this building, which meant that there wouldn't be anyone guarding him. His hopes were dashed when Darby grabbed him by the back of his neck with an uncomfortably hot hand.
Nah, kid. You get to see this. I mean, it's your fault this is happening anyway. So if things go sideways, it's only fair you die too, right? And we may as well show you what happens to people who cross us.
He squeezed Izuku's neck harder and forced him through the portal. Quick side note, the rain started. Sorry. The process was still as disorienting as ever, and he let out a small squeak when he saw All for One, resting and surrounded by all the machines keeping him alive. It looked like he was out of the frying pan and into the fire. How in the world did he keep managing to make this situation worse for himself? It was honestly getting impressive at this point.
Tomura.
All for One didn't even turn to face them.
I thought I told you to rest until the next phase of our plan. Please, go enjoy your time, as it will be quite limited once our plans come to fruition. You mean your plans?
Shigaraki accused.
I was never really your successor, was I? I was just some kid that you could string along to be your puppet.
Izuku froze as All for One spun in his chair so he was facing them.
What are you talking about, young Tomura? I've always had your best interests at heart. The heroes never saved you. I'm simply... They wouldn't have had to if it wasn't for you.
Darby snapped.
You can't pat yourself on the back for saving someone you endangered in the first place.
Yeah. We all know what really happened, Magne said. Stop trying to deny it. You were the one that gave Shigaraki his quirk in the first place, weren't you? Izuku could practically feel the bloodlust coming off him in waves. But All for One was outwardly calm, as he gave a tired sigh.
Deku is trying to poison your mind against me, isn't he? I thought you were better than this, Tomura. You know the boy is a liar and a cheat. He's the one who's been writing all those nasty articles, so it's quite obvious to me that he's the true manipulator here.
Izuku waited for Shigaraki to turn on him. But it didn't happen. Instead, Shigaraki went completely silent, not looking at any of them as he walked around the room. The rest of them watched him like he was a dangerous animal, waiting for him to come to a decision and make his next move. He stopped right next to Izuku, who tensed as Shigaraki stared contemplatively down at his own hand.
Sensei, you've always said that I can destroy anything I hate, right? Yes, my child.
All for One sounded pleased. and smiled slyly as Izuku's stomach sank.
It's your birthright.
Shigaraki nodded, and suddenly his arm snapped out. Izuku instinctively flinched, closing his eyes as he waited for the feeling of his body disintegrating out from underneath him. But nothing happened. After a moment, he cracked one eye open, and his jaw dropped. Instead of grabbing Izuku, Shigaraki had reached out and put his whole hand on one of the life support machines lining the wall. He glared at All for One as the disintegration spread, and the interconnected machines all collapsed softly into dust, as All for One sat staring at them in shock.
Then die.